to other people. We also have Chad Harmon. He's running for Indiana House District 69. And again, we'll have links down to websites and social media too. Chad, thanks for being here. And we also have Kurtis Cummings. He's running for Indiana House District 46. Kurtis, thanks for being here today.
You got it.
And then, of course, a conversation on gun violence prevention would not be complete without inviting Courtney Daly here. She is the statewide trainer for Moms Demand Action. Courtney, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful. To start things off, I want to invite you all to make an introductory statement on where you see gun violence prevention, how you're handling the events of the past couple of weeks, and we'll go in the order that we just went through an introduction. So Penny, could we start with you? Just a couple minutes. Where are you at right now?
Oh, my soul is hurting, first of all. And it's, you know, Peter and Courtney and I have talked about this. We can't keep arming people. That's not the solution here at all. If more guns made us safer, we'd be the safest country in the United States. And that's just not what's happening. We're seeing unexpected violence in schools, in hospitals, in grocery stores. This has got to stop. We have got to reverse what Indiana just is putting into effect with permitless carry. We need to listen to law enforcement. We also, you know, I've been reading about some things and thinking about what's going on in our own community. Over the last couple of years, we have pulled together on things related to criminal justice and related to community health efforts. And it's really brought people together. So we need to start to have conversations on how we reduce gun violence in our community so that we're sharing things as a community. We've lost that. COVID has made it worse for all of us in terms of our linkages to other people. But we need to get back to where we're caring about others, where we know others, so that I know the people who are there, that they know they can come and trust me, that they know that they can come and talk about things. There are just a lot of things that we need to do in terms of promoting our red flag law here in Indiana. We need to be disarming domestic abusers. We need to work on racial violence. Just so many things that come to mind. But I need to stand up. I need to stand really strong on this issue because I can't stand to see any more babies hurt. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. I think we're all in agreement there. All right, next, Chad Harmon, where are you at these days?
Well, I'm right there with Penny. You know, I've got 3 school-age children, one in elementary, one middle school, one high school. And, the idea that they're not safe or can't be protected scares me. I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't, but I don't think that, I think that we as a society have let them down. Like, I know that there's, Democrats try to do as much as they can, but if you look at us as a collective society, we have let them down. And I think that we need to work together, to fix the things that, cause these issues, and my policy basically boils down to common sense. Like, you should have to get a background check before you get a gun. Yeah, you should prove that you're not a dangerous person. The red flag law, like there's that 14-day period where, just because they took their gun doesn't mean they can't go buy a new gun. I mean, what's the point of taking away their guns if they can just go buy new ones? We need to close that loophole. There's too many assault rifles out there. Nobody needs an assault rifle. There's no waiting period in Indiana. I mean, all of the common sense stuff is missing from Indiana. And, my kids go to school here, and, in the end, I want to protect them. And I think that we can work harder to make that happen. And I'm ready to do that. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I'm excited to hear some of your other ideas as you continue to talk. Kurtis, how are you? Where are you at these days?
Hey, thanks so much, Peter. My daughter is 4, and up until recently, I haven't really thought. I mean, she's in preschool. Up until recently, I never really thought that she would be in any danger. The school has locking doors, and I trust the teachers, and the safety plans are all in place. But it can happen anywhere. It can happen to anyone, and protocols are great, but they're not foolproof. And for me, I for those that know me, I advocate for mental health a lot. And for me, I just feel like, when it comes to this pandemic, because that's what it is. At the end of the day, it's a nationwide health crisis when we have the number one cause of death for children to be gun violence. That's, it's not trauma like it used to be. It's not, they're falling into a lake, or, it's gun violence. And, for me, I really look at the mental health side of this, because typically would-be school shooters don't typically keep their plans to themselves. They tell their friends or even teachers that they want to kill, that they have violent thoughts, and they talk about that anger and their suicide, and that they may have suicidal ideation. They lash out violently against family and friends. But more and more teens that have attacked their schoolmates, that pattern has proved to hold true over time. It was true for the Parkland shooter. It was true for the Buffalo shooter. It was true for the Robb Elementary shooter. The fact of the matter is that it's crucial to set up systems to spot teens that are struggling and may become dangerous. And, our teachers are already underpaid and overworked, and we're adding one more thing to their plate. Now they're, when you see videos of teachers, making prep kits in their schools for, just, it's, I don't know. I keep on thinking to myself, like from 1987 to 2005, like when I graduated high school, I never once went to school, and I went to school in a rural a community school corporation up in Delaware County. And I never once thought, we never had active shooter drills. We had tornado drills and fire drills, right? Like my best friend's daughter, who's in the 1st grade, she's doing active shooter drills, and it gives her nightmares at night. Like, that is, for lack of better words, that's just so screwed up. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you for sharing. It is a scary time. Courtney, how are you? Where are you at these days?
Every time, unfortunately, because of the nature of my involvement in gun violence prevention advocacy, I pay very close attention to all the news stories. I see all of the headlines that come across every day. And these big ones like that have happened in the past couple of weeks, Buffalo and Uvalde and Tulsa, it just magnifies for me the problem that we have, obviously, in our country. And Kurtis is right. We do have an epidemic. It's a public health crisis in our country. And so I think for the first time ever last week, my initial reaction just immediately went to rage, just irate. And I just didn't even have, suitable for public audiences words to say in response, because I was so angry and frustrated, because these are preventable deaths. We don't have to live like this. This is a choice. We are failing our not just our children, because this isn't just about mass shootings. As Penny touched on, it's domestic violence, it's suicides, it's unintentional shootings. So there's a lot of areas that we need to be focusing on. And a lot of people have also asked me, well, am I feeling kind of hopeless because nothing's changed since Sandy Hook? And the answer is that things have changed since Sandy Hook, right? They're incremental, they're small changes, but it's very different. a very different atmosphere than it was 10 years ago, because now we can talk about this without feeling like we're saying something really wrong, right? 10 years ago, this would not have been a public conversation.
Yeah.
And politicians would never have touched this topic, because to them, that would have been just the end of their campaign. And now, I'm so thrilled. We have people actually coming to Moms Demand Action and saying, please give me the survey. I want to be a Moms Demand Action gun sense candidate. People are proud to advertise their stance on gun violence prevention. And so, no, I'm not feeling discouraged, and I'm not feeling like nothing has changed. I'm feeling like more and more every year, more people are finally waking up and saying, oh, we just need to be doing the common sense thing, and we need to be doing what we should have been doing all along. And so it's taking longer than I would like, but it's happening. It's getting there.
Thank you. Before we launch into our questions, I wanted to make sure I gave others a chance to speak. And I just wanted to open the floor real quick to vocalize any thoughts or feelings that folks had around this issue before we move into discussions of policy. Pamela?
I'm 73 years old. When I was a child, there was a YMCA within walking distance of my house with programs for teens and all kinds of crafts and groups. The school had clubs. I stayed after school every day for a club. The bus driver who drove us home after clubs was someone who just exuded kindness and decency. There was a youth fellowship. There was Girl Scouts. There were community programs for teen sports. I could not walk out the door without finding some adult who was committed to helping me grow and to keeping me emotionally safe and healthy. This has all been stripped away. I think our school children are absolutely adrift, and the ones who need help most fade into the wallpaper. This is terrifying. I'm a grandma. I'm not going to talk about how terrifying it is. You just write that in. You're legislators, and you are focused on legal remedies, and I honor and respect that. But communities are starving for the least bit of caring for our teenagers. And then for the older shooters, they seem to be people motivated by rage at work or relationships. We have bought into an ideology that people are responsible for themselves, for their own well-being, that they have to defend themselves, that they have to protect themselves. And I find that at the root of much of the thinking that makes somebody buy a gun and shoot up a church or his doctor or his job. Exactly what Penny said, that we've lost this closeness, this sense of community, and the pandemic has made it so much worse. People are profoundly isolated and profoundly lonely. That's what I got.
Thank you, Pamela. You're always a fount of wisdom. So I wanted to make sure that everyone else that wanted to speak had a chance and a space to speak. All right. The first question that I wanted to pose to those running for office here, and Courtney, I'm just going to lump you into those running for office, so you might as well just file someday.
She's a briefing chairperson, you know that, so.
There you go, yeah. There have been people that have been working on this for a long time. There have been policy options that have been floating around for a long time. How do we amplify the voices of those who've been doing this work in the state legislature. Penny, can we start with you? How do we amplify the voices who've been doing this work, like yourself, for years?
Well, I don't feel like I've been doing it at the level that Courtney and others have been doing it, but I don't feel that they have really, they don't get the respect that they deserve, first of all. You know, I sit there and I've been at like committee meetings with them, and they're almost ignored. They're almost laughed at. And that lack of respect for me is just appalling, especially when we're talking about fellow citizens of Indiana. You know, they have some very, as Kurtis has said, they've had some very, very common sense things to bring forward, and they're just ignored. We have to stop that. The other thing that I've seen, and this is because of my own experience, years ago when I was working on some things for my own son, it takes a lot of people. And so we need to start to invite people to be talking to us. We need to, when we're up at the state legislature, when we're elected, we need to reach out and say, bring people in from East Chicago, bring people in from Fort Wayne, bring people in from Jeffersonville. The more we can bring people in, the more the state legislature is going to listen.
Penny, would you say they are ignored or dismissed? Just blown off?
They're patted on the head. I don't know, Courtney, you have more experience at this than I do.
Yeah, I would say we're sometimes dismissed and disrespected, but I think a lot of it also comes from they don't like that we're challenging them. I've seen even just the change in how they respond to us, and we're kind of living rent free inside their heads. We're getting to them. Several years ago, I testified before a committee up at the legislature against a gun bill, and it was a very unfriendly committee, and I was very surprised at how they kind of attacked me while I was up there testifying, but I took that as a good sign. So yeah, they try to dismiss us, but it's more out of frustration that we're putting a wrench in their plans.
I really like the fact that Moms isn't giving up, and that's how we're going to make a change, is to keep at it and to expand that base.
But Chad, Harmon, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, from what I've seen, it's, you know, I mean, they even kind of dismiss the police when they're talking too. So I mean, it's not just, you know, activists and, you know, people that have had it, they're just dismissing everybody. Because when you're, I mean, we keep talking about common sense. When you're against common sense, you've got really nothing but, you know, anger and, you know, BS to throw around. You don't have any actual argument. So, you know, me personally, and I think that honesty and frankness is important in this conversation. I didn't want to, guns was not going to be one of my topics for when I was running. You know, there are a lot of guns in, you know, District 69, you know, so I didn't want to, but, you know, it's not that I didn't, you know, think that it was the right thing to do. I just didn't know how we would amplify our voices. And you know, I think that unfortunately, you know, Robb Elementary brought about some, you know, another chance for conversation. And I think possibly learn from Sandy Hook, you know, that it just kind of goes away if we don't keep fighting. So I think we just have to keep fighting. So.
Well, and I think at least my hope in inviting those who are running for Indiana House districts is that when Courtney and hopefully the rest of us go up and testify in a bill, it won't be as hostile. It won't be as a negative an environment, and there will be more of that common sense. Kurtis, what do you think about all this? What are your thoughts around amplifying voices or talking about guns at all on the campaign trail?
Well, I think one of the steps of amplifying our voices for common sense gun reform is is part of it has got to be muting the voices of non-politicians that have a financial interest in legislation, right? Like we have got to get big money out of politics. We have got to get the huge PAC money out. You know, the NRA is only powerful based upon their projection of fear and their control of candidates. I mean, they're not even candidates, right? These are actual elected officials. You know, it's become very evident to me as I'm talking to folks that are in my district here in District 46, which is Ellettsville and Spencer and Gosport and Terre Haute. It's a fairly large area, a lot of rural. And you would immediately think that, you know, the majority of those folks are going to be, you know, very pro Second Amendment. And, but most of them are sportsmen, right? They enjoy hunting, they enjoy wildlife, they're supporters of, you know, the Department of Natural Resources. And they also, you know, in rural Indiana where, you know, if you have a emergency on your homestead that it may take, you know, there may be only 3 sheriff's officers in the county covering the entire county, and it may take 30-45 minutes for the first responding officer to get to your home. I understand home protection, but you know, getting the big money out of politics to where we can have the everyday citizen, their voices need to be amplified. And I think we are kind of the catalyst to that. Because like I said, I truly feel like from the people that I've talked to in our district so far, and granted, it's not, I mean, the sample size isn't huge, but I've been having these conversations, and because I want to know, you know, I'm going to be your representative. Let me be your voice up at the State House. I want to know what your thoughts are on this. And, you know, overwhelmingly, you're right, the majority of people are supportive of the Second Amendment, but they see no reason to have an assault rifle, right? Like, it's like, you know, it's not an effective tool for deer hunting. It is, you know, if you need an assault rifle to defend your homestead, I think you're doing it wrong, you know, like, and just the fact that, I mean, I realize we're not going to move mountains overnight, but just something as simple, like I love what Courtney says. It's like just little tiny things that's making it go in the right, you know, a direction. You know, I own a brewery, and I would go to jail if I, or at least I would be cited if I continuously sold alcohol to an 18-year-old in this state. But apparently we can sell an 18-year-old a destructive weapon. It makes no sense to me. Again, common sense.
Well, thanks. So Courtney, I mean, we're hearing from Kurtis, it's maybe that Swiss cheese policy approach, right? It's just these thin slices of Swiss cheese and the harms maybe can't get through. Is it this? I mean, tell me about what Moms has been doing. What has Moms been advocating for? What's working, what's not? Talk about your experience and how we can amplify what Moms has been doing. And then Ronna, we'll get to you.
So, you know, we work in a lot of different areas for trying to work toward reducing gun violence. One of the biggest areas we do work in is legislative. We develop relationships with our legislators. We go up to the State House every time a bill that we are supporting or opposing is being heard. We go up with our red shirts on, and they have gotten to know us there. We like them to know that we're watching. Funny, you know, one of my favorite stories is a couple of us were showing up one time at the State House, and they were passing one of the lawmakers, and they heard him turn to his buddy and go, the moms are here. We're going to be here a while. You know, but it's not just legislatively. You know, we try to work in areas of education, educating about common sense, gun safety even. You know, we accept the reality that people are going to own firearms. And so we work within that framework and just try to promote safe storage and modeling responsible behavior and recognizing, you know, that there are red flag laws, you know, so that there are options when somebody is in crisis. And then policy, you know, we try to, you know, in small ways, trying to change the gun culture where, you know, if people are open carrying in stores, that makes other customers very uncomfortable. So we approach these stores. We go to restaurants with bars in them. We go to bars and we say, hey, you know, people really don't like to see that. You know, what do you think? Did you know you can enact a policy where people can't carry firearms in here? A lot of people don't even, a lot of store owners and restaurant managers don't know that they have the right to do that. They've been misinformed. So, you know, that's another way in which we work and try to help change things. Now, as far as amplifying what gun violence advocates all across the country are doing, not just Moms Demand Action, you know, it's very important, I think, to pay attention to the bills that are coming up and to help us get out there and communicate with constituents, with other lawmakers on, you know, the stance that maybe we're taking on this bill, why it's bad, why it's good. We'll support good gun legislation too. And contacting and raising your voice so that other lawmakers know exactly where you stand on this. You know, we always tell our supporters, here's this bill coming up. We're very good at messaging, you know, this is why we feel that it is dangerous. Please contact your representative and tell them that. We also highly encourage people to contact their representative for good things, even just, you know, an attaboy or a thank you or a, hey, here's a bill that we support, please promote it, because we know that lawmakers need to be able to go to their peers too and say, oh my gosh, I'm getting so much support for this one bill. Let's take a look at it, you know, to testify whenever you can about a piece of legislation, because if they don't hear, you know, from their constituents, well, I mean, this past session proved that even when they do hear from their constituents, they'll steamroll, you know, just like they did to get that permitless carry passed. It didn't matter. But hey, for the most part, you know, you keep raising your voices, they can't ignore you. But, you know, another way that you can help amplify the work of gun violence prevention advocates is to make gun safety a common part of your conversation. Don't shy away from it. You know, when you see people, you know, if kind of like if you see something, say something. You know, I have gotten into the habit of anytime my children go to a new house for a play date, or anytime we go over to a relative's house that we've not been to before, and, you know, the kids are going to run off playing, I always ask, do you own guns? And if so, how are they stored? It's just become my common go-to. It was uncomfortable at first, but I've never, ever had anybody react poorly to it. And I've gotten yeses, and I've gotten, oh, thank you for asking me. I never thought to ask that question. So, you know, the more we make it just part of our conversation, the less uncomfortable it feels. We need to make this not uncomfortable to talk about, because yes, it's an upsetting topic at times, but it needs to be normalized. We need to normalize the conversation. And then, you know, a lot of people have a misconception about gun violence prevention advocates, thinking that, you know, we're called gun grabbers a lot, you know, or we're hysterical and just coming off of emotions. You know, please do your best. If you hear that in conversation, just say, you know, as a matter of fact, you know, for example, Moms Demand Action supports the Second Amendment. They also believe they can reduce gun violence through common sense legislation and just kind of help rehabilitate people's idea of our image. But most importantly, I think, is listen to survivors of gun violence. That is the best that you can do, and give them a chance to tell their story if they're comfortable doing so, and follow their lead, because these are the people who have experienced it and had it touch their everyday lives. And somebody who's never been in that situation can't empathize properly and sympathize, and they don't know what it's like to walk in their shoes. And so, we do our best to try to amplify the voices of survivors and to follow their lead. And I think if we all did that as a society, and our lawmakers gave them, more of a chance and more of a platform, there would be a lot more understanding about why common sense gun reform is so essential.
Well, and Courtney, you see in the chat, you're already getting kudos. So well said. Courtney, I put a link in for everyone else. I put links to your websites. We've got momsdemandaction.org and then Moms Demand Action Indiana on Facebook. Are those the best places people can go?
Those are great places. Yes, if you're interested in joining an event or finding out what's going on in you, there's an event page on the momsdemandaction.org website. You can just put in your zip code and it will pull up a list of events within a certain mile radius for you. The Indiana Facebook page is great for following what's going on statewide, and we'll also elevate some national stuff. There are local pages too. These are private pages, so you have to be approved to join. But for example, we have a Bloomington Moms Demand Action page, and that's one of the best ways to find out locally what's happening. We have a lot of stuff going on there and a lot of great ways to get involved. And I do want to say too, there's also another misconception because of our name that we're moms. We are mothers and others. We're dads, we're grandparents, we're educators. We are open to everybody, because it takes all hands. People just are, they listen to moms.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about doing this event and doing other events is because those who are perpetuating the violence are these young men who are so lost. And it just breaks my heart. And I don't want to talk about those who perpetuate the violence. That's not what this space is for. But we need to be doing something. We need men to stand up, and we need men to say this is not okay. So I'm happy to do that and join other men here. Rana, you've had your hand up for a while. What would you like to say?
Well, first, I just want to say that I love hearing about these ideas and common sense. And I'm like, yes, there are 10 people that get what I think about common sense and the dealing with guns. But I am so frustrated and scared, frankly, that in my family and in some close friends, there's no such thing as common because they completely believe and think differently than I do. And you can't just keep saying common sense because there's no common. So is there another way to phrase this or think of this or frame it so that because common sense should be common, but it isn't. And that's I think one thing that's frustrating me.
Well, what do you think? What have you heard on the campaign trail? Do you use the term common gun sense? Have you used another term that you found is better? Chad, Penny, Kurtis?
Yeah, I use the phrase common sense, and a lot of people, well, most of them, agree with the big things that the background checks and red flags, and I'm finding common ground, even with some of my more Second Amendment crazy type friends. I mean, like even the ones that post the craziest memes are in favor of background checks, and I do believe that there is common ground. So
Pamela, I see your hand, but I want to make sure that Penny and Kurtis had a chance to answer briefly. If they want to, you don't have to.
I think it's sort of topic by topic, when we talk about, I really appreciate the fact that Kurtis said, You don't need an assault rifle if it's for hunting. You don't need an assault rifle really to protect your home. You don't need an expanded gun magazine. You know, there are a lot of things that we need to stand up and say, show me why you think these are reasonable. And so it's in, maybe we need to be talking about what's reasonable, Rana, instead of common sense. But anybody who has hunted knows that these things are not part of what you need to have in your home.
What I think is kind of interesting is, you know, I've grown up with guns my entire life. I remember my grandfather taking me hunting out in the woods at a very early age. And I relate this a little bit to alcohol, because in European countries and things, like, it's fairly common for someone younger to enjoy a glass of wine at holiday dinner, or, you know, they learn to appreciate and respect alcohol as they have a drink younger in life with their parents. Of course, they have to have that support of their parents. And I kind of relate that to my experience with guns, and is the fact that, you know, before I even had my first hand on a rifle, my grandfather, you know, was like, before your first day of hunting, you're going with me to hunter education class. And, you know, we went to the state DNR office and sat in a class that lasted a few weekends, and, you know, learned all the safety and all the rules and, you know, all the state laws that revolve around hunting. And that gave me an appreciation and a safety course. I mean, we talk about common sense a lot. I mean, but even those that have an advanced training still have near misses, or they, you know, have incidents that occur. I mean, the big thing that worried me when Indiana went to permitless carry was, how many more handguns would people be carrying around that, frankly, they've had no training or experience with that firearm. And a firearm is a very simple device if you think about it mechanically. We all drive automobiles, and they're incredibly complex, and complex rules and regulations. You kind of see where I'm going at with this. But just a great example, you know, when I worked as a paramedic here in town, you know, I can count in the 10 years that I was on the ambulance, how more times than I would care to admit, how many times I responded to calls where people accidentally shot themselves. You know, maybe they were taking keys out of their pocket, and they had a small pistol in their pocket, and it hit the trigger. I mean, these are people that are in their 50s and 60s that have immense knowledge of that weapon, but it can happen to anybody. And so, you know, where does common sense and safety, where does that intersect on the Venn diagram? I don't really know, but I do feel like if more education, more training, more certifications were to be required, it would make gun ownership more safe. It would make households more safe. And it would also give instructors that period of time to get to know their students and maybe throw up a red flag, say, hey, something doesn't seem right here. Like, you know, I don't know. I kind of drifted. I'm sorry, but that's, there's a lot to chew through with this one.
There's a lot to chew through. And, you know, I think what brought us here was a mass event, but you're raising a good point about accidents and training and all those. Let's see, Courtney, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say that I think, well, actually, Rana just exactly hit right on it in her messaging. It's about responsible gun ownership, right? So if common sense isn't feeling like the comfortable term, I think everybody can agree it's about responsible gun ownership. And we fully acknowledge most gun owners are responsible, and they want to be responsible, which is why gun owners in Indiana overwhelmingly opposed repealing the permitting system. So that's all I wanted to say.
Well, and Courtney, I'm going to say this really quickly as well. I think we already have the systems in place to put some checks and balances, right? Like, I could today, you know, and several years ago, like, I am I'm a concealed permit carrier. Like, I don't carry every day, but I do have that permit, and I do have a weapon in my home. But I specifically went out to ask for instruction from, friends that are in law enforcement, and asked, hey, can I go out to the range with you? Can I practice drills? It's locked up, it's safe for my child. And but my point is, I can go today and go buy a handgun at Rule King right now. Within the hour, I could be back with a bag of popcorn and a handgun. But I cannot right now go buy a silencer. I can't, right? Nor could I go buy any type of other destructive device, as Title II of the Gun Control Act states, right? Like, there are certain processes in place. There's federal tax stamps you have to receive. These processes are in place. We could put, AR-15 style weapons into that category. And then all of a sudden, you can't just go out and buy an AR-15. Yeah, you have to get a tax stamp, and it takes some time and it takes some money. You can still own it legally. But at least it puts another check and balance in place.
Well, Rana, thank you for bringing our attention to the terminology. I think that was a really important topic, especially as all these candidates are going to be heading back out onto the canvassing trail if they haven't already started in the not too distant future. Let me pivot to Pamela. You've been very patient. What would you like to share?
Oh, you guys are keeping me entertained. I don't need to be patient. I think when we use the term common sense, that sets up some reactivity. Like, if I have common sense, what am I saying you have? And so I'm cautious about that. I like responsible and safe much better in terms of what we are aiming for. And I also wanted to propose fairness, fairness to our children, fairness to our community, to make decisions about guns that are fair to others.
Thank you, Pamela. Any thoughts or feelings to respond to Pamela's thoughts on fairness? Jennifer.
Sorry, I'm trying to come off of mute. So good morning, everybody. I just wanted to just kind of make a comment, going back to Courtney's initial statement that she said earlier. Some of y'all might know, some of you might not know, because I don't know everybody on the call, but I personally have been affected by gun violence. In 2004, my brother was shot and killed in Chicago. And before then, I remember having a firsthand experience with one of my classmates in the 7th grade being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Unfortunately, skipped school, hung out with the wrong crowd, and was shot and killed. 7th grade. And these are stories from communities like mine, which originally I'm from Gary, that sometimes get overlooked. And I like the fact that Courtney came back to it and said, we can't center ourselves around, only certain types of tragedies, because gun violence is gun violence. It's the intersectionality of it all together. And one thing that I do appreciate with moms is the fact, and also, being a part of it, is the fact that every voice is welcome in this fight. And there's a woman by the name of Deandra who is in Indianapolis and tells her story. And Courtney, you can probably touch to this a lot more as well. Deandra is a Black woman whose son was critically injured. I think he got shot in the head, and forever has changed his life. And, I think she has posted how the fact that he's missed prom, he's missed going off to college, all his friends are starting to go away now. And here she is trying to help. She has to, for the rest of his natural life, help him, because he, like I said, he's critically injured, and he has to help. So I appreciate the conversation, and I also just want to make sure that we also bring it back to, yes, it's a tragedy when it's happening to, babies that are supposed to be going to school and thinking that they're coming back. It's also a tragedy, seeing, things down my street, as I'm currently here in Gary, just seeing the violence that has erupted. And so I think when we talk about this fight together, I think we can do better together when we also make sure that we are including the conversations of these types of acts of violence, because every day I think about my brother, and I think about, all the things that he has missed because he's not here. And it's a little emotional to even, think about that. So I'm just gonna stop talking. I'm glad my camera's off. But it's really important for us to remember these lives, because not that they were just taken, they were stolen. Yeah, so that's all I have to say.
Jennifer, thank you for sharing, and thank you for your vulnerability and your bravery. I really appreciate that. Let me also add, you see in the chat that Ms. Crossley was recently elected to the Monroe County Council. It is vitally important, in my estimation, that Penny, Kurtis, and Chad win. We need people like Jennifer Crossley making decisions where the public just isn't watching, and that happens so often. I'm speaking as someone on the county council as well, and it's so important to have that voice speaking. Let me open the floor to any reactions to what Jennifer just said.
Jennifer's one of the reasons that I am standing up, because I have heard her story for several years and her pain, but I've also heard the story of other survivors locally that have moved me. And I cannot stand the fact that there may be another parent or sister or brother or child. One of the stories locally that I've heard was someone lost her sister who was stalked by an ex-boyfriend. Another one lost her brother because of suicide. This isn't just because of assault rifles and extended magazines. This is unsecured guns, and this is responsible gun ownership again, is what it comes down to. And so we need to keep pushing back. We need to keep elevating these stories. We need to keep saying this has to end. When I draw a lot of parallels between Moms Against Drunk Driving and moms demand gun sense issues. We didn't give up alcohol in our society, but we did zero down on drinking and driving, right? We're not saying to people, give up your guns, but we're talking about let's prevent as many of these deaths as possible. And so I think that there are a lot of parallels here. It did take, when I think back to Moms Against Drunk Driving, it took years. It took a lot of voices. It took a lot of elevation. But that's exactly what's going on right now. And I think that we can make a difference by continuing to push these things.
Courtney, can you share a little bit more about what is Purpose for My Pain, that organization?
Yeah, so like Jennifer said, Deandra founded this in honor of her son, who she still cares for every day and who still struggles on a daily basis and needs lots of attention and help. Purpose for My Pain reaches out when there is an incident of gun violence in their community. They reach out to the survivors and say, we are here to support you and help you in any way that we can. So they provide mentorship. They also provide resources to the grieving families. How can we help you during this time? What can we do for you? And then, they try to help build a community of people who have gone through something similar, so that they know they don't have to go through this alone. They can lean on people who have been through this before. And I think it's also very important to note that, we talk a lot about, when we talk about survivors of gun violence, we talk about, the people being shot and killed. We always talk about how there are 110 Americans who die every day from gun violence. What we talk about far less often is that twice as many are injured. And these are traumatic injuries, as we've seen with Deandra's son. These aren't injuries that you just, treat for a week, shake off, and you're fine. These affect the rest of your life. So I think it's also very important just to remember all of the people who are wounded by gun violence. We're talking about, the number of people killed in Uvalde, but nobody's really giving much airspace to the fact that there were 17 people who were also wounded. And so we need to be able to support those people too. They need that kind of support moving forward, because medical bills and just trauma, and it's horrible.
I agree. I recently took part in a webinar with Lauren McGee. She's an assistant professor up at IUPUI, and she studies this very thing. They're quantifying trauma as it relates to non-fatal gun violence. And their work is just absolutely terrifying. I mean, phenomenal. I'm glad they're doing it. But you think about, just the reverberations that the non-fatal shooting here in Bloomington had over the Little Five weekend, and all the talk about how is our community safe? Is it unsafe? Can I go out to the bar? Can I go out to a restaurant? That sort of thing. And so there is long-term trauma. Okay, let me check in with the clock here. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We have about 7 minutes left. We have 2 more huge questions that we were going to discuss. We clearly are not going to have time for that. So what I want to do is, instead of talking about how do we make our schools safer and how do we center equity in what we're doing, and particularly it comes to the way that there's racial discrepancies that exist in the data, and there's certainly targeting happening. I just want to open up the floor to closing comments. What do you need to say? How can we help your campaigns? Do you need dollars? Do you need volunteers? What do you need? And for those who aren't running for office, what would you like to see of these candidates?
We need to say that our budgets are our priorities, first of all, when we're in office. And that looks at funding violence intervention programs, for example. That looks at funding police use of force accountability issues and programs. We need to do a lot of things that address some of this stuff. And so I think we need to look at where we're spending our dollars, where we're putting our priorities at the State House. We need to even talk about stand your ground laws when we talk about some of these racial disparities. That's another place where they come in. And so I think that there's a lot that we can be doing, a lot that we can be saying to people. We can tell our personal stories, like Kurtis. I grew up hunting with my dad and my granddad, my uncle, my cousin. I respect guns. And so I know personally how devastating things can be. So we just have to be out there. We have to relate to people, let them know that they can trust us. We have to be able to go door to door. Yeah, I'd love to have people with me every single day. But I also know that it's important for people like Courtney and her children to be out there giving those same messages because of what's important to all of us. So Peter, thank you for organizing this. Courtney, thank you for organizing this and putting this together. We need more people out there pushing these issues.
Well, Penny, thank you for running. It's really important. And for those of you that don't know, the race that Penny's in right now is an open seat and is one of the most contested races here in Indiana. So we really need to show up and show out for Penny here. So Penny, thank you for speaking today and for wearing orange. Chad, Kurtis, final thoughts, final words. What can we do? How can we do it? What do you need?
So yeah, one of my biggest issues is mental health. So, we've got a lot of conservatives now that are jumping on this, let's go to mental health. This, I was just talking to my father-in-law, and he's like, you're not going to take my assault rifle, but we should invest money in, mental health. And, let's make them put their money where their mouth is. You know what I mean? If this is really what they think the solution is, then let's move that along, and let's get more mental health out to rural communities. My opponent is a NRA Defender of Freedom Award recipient. So this is a guy that I can't even look at his Facebook page anymore to get to mine for stupid stuff that he does, because it is expected to have to see the stuff that he's posting. So obviously, and you can go to Harmon for Indiana. It's in the chat, and I just, all the voices I can get out there to let people know, who's representing them. I don't think they even really grasped that. So yeah, those are the things.
Thank you.
I've actually heard that too, Chad. I've actually heard people on the campaign trail literally ask me, like, state representative, what does that do? Like, are you part of Congress? And I'm like, no, like, this is the mini version of Congress. These are the kitchen table issues that affect you, a Hoosier, in our state, right? Like, there's a lot of national issues we cannot, that is way above my pay grade, right? But this is, these are the issues that we are running to represent the people in our districts, the people in our communities. We are members of the community. I chose to run because when I moved out here to Ellettsville with my family, I realized that my opponent had ran unopposed for 2 terms in a row. So for 4 years, there was no other candidate running against him. And that's just not how democracy works. And that's not how, how are you representing people when you have no competition? My opponent, he hasn't updated his social media pages since like 2010. If you go to his website, he doesn't even own it anymore, bobheaton.com. Someone else bought his website and put up some pretty funny stuff. But I've made a pledge, like a lot of other Democratic candidates, to not accept any corporate PAC money. I'm not accepting any big money, any out-of-state money from big corporate, entities, from big corporate PACs. This is 100% grassroots, campaign. I know that we're cutting short on time here, so I'm going to wrap it up by just saying, my opponent raised $125,000 in a year that he was not contested. Don't really know why you need to raise that much money in a year that you're not contested, unless your agenda is somewhere else and not with the people you're supposed to represent. And so visit kurtisforindiana.com, check out our social media pages. And yes, again, Peter, thank you for inviting us all and bringing us together. Courtney, continue the good fight. You are, I loved reading the history of your organization, and everyone's absolutely right. This is still in its infancy, but I think it is, this is all very important work that we're doing. And unfortunately, the recent events have just amplified the need for it.
Absolutely. All right, so I have placed 3 upcoming events into the chat. Tonight, go hang out with Courtney, right, Courtney?
Please.
Yeah, you want to talk about what's happening tonight at Switchyard Park at 8 p.m. in Bloomington?
Yep. It's Wear Orange for gun safety. Yesterday was National Gun Violence Awareness Day. This is, we come together in honor of survivors, right, to help elevate their voices and to show them that they're not alone and that we are with them. And I will be reading a proclamation from the Monroe County Commissioners declaring Monroe County Gun Violence Awareness Day. So thank you so much for that. And if Jennifer gets back in time, she will be speaking as a survivor. And we always love hearing her words because she moves everybody to action. And then we'll light up some biodegradable sky lanterns, which are really beautiful, and we'll, yeah, pay
Wonderful.
tribute. Yeah.
And then for those of you that are interested in gun violence prevention on the federal side, there will be a town hall this upcoming Tuesday at 6:00 p.m. at the Monroe County Public Library. The Monroe County Democratic Party is hosting that one, and Matt Fife will be talking about his policy objectives at the federal level. And then on June 11th, there will be a March for Our Lives. They took a 2-year hiatus because of COVID, but it's back. That'll be noon at the Monroe County Courthouse. And all of those, you can find all these events on peteriversen.org. You can find most of them on Everytown or Moms Demand Action. And Pamela, I will certainly reshare all of these events on Facebook. I believe that all 3 of those events have their own Facebook events, so I'll make sure to share those out. Anybody want the last word?
I just want to very quickly say thank you all so much, and to implore you all to please get out of your comfort zone. And gun violence makes us all uncomfortable. So get out of your comfort zone and start working toward what you believe that in, and being passionate about and ending this. So thank you.
All
Change is
right, thank you.
possible.
What'd you say, Penny?
Change is possible.
Yeah. So the recording of this will end up on YouTube. I'll share it out. That way you all can share it with those who want to see it, and you can clip it to make sure that your words are echoed and amplified, as we've been talking about. Thank you all for joining, and I look forward to seeing you at the State House, testifying, or out there marching for our lives.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.